The glass tray hits the marble floor with a sharp crack that silences half the ballroom. Crystal champagne flutes shatter into glittering shards across polished shoes and evening gowns. Emma Reese doesn't flinch at the sound. She's used to commanding attention at these charity galas, used to cameras flashing in her direction, used to being the woman everyone wants to be. But when she turns to offer the clumsy waiter a practiced smile of forgiveness, her entire world stops. He's looking directly at her, brown eyes, calm as still water. A faint scar under his left eye that she remembers tracing with her fingertips 8 years ago. His voice, when he speaks, is barely above a whisper, but it cuts through the orchestra music, and champagne-fueled laughter like a blade. "You missed a spot, Mrs. Reese." The blood drains from Emma's face so quickly she actually sways. Her hand finds her husband's arm, fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks through his expensive suit. Daniel Reese, investor, philanthropist, the man whose TED Talk on ethical business practices has 7 million views, looks down at his wife with concern that would seem genuine to anyone who doesn't know him. "Emma, what's wrong?" But she can't answer. She's watching the waiter walk away, disappearing into the crowd of Seattle's elite with the easy grace of someone who has all the time in the world. Someone who has already waited 8 years. Someone who learned patience in a 6x8 cell. "Daniel," she finally manages, her voice cracking. "He's back." Her husband's face doesn't change, but his grip on his champagne glass tightens until his knuckles go white. They both know exactly who she means. They both know what that means. 8 years in a cage. 8 years dreaming of this night. They thought they buried me. They forgot I was learning how to dig. Ryan Carter had been simple once. That's what made him perfect. Ex-Marine with a cybersecurity job that paid well enough, loyal to a fault, the kind of man who still opened doors and actually listened when people talked. When Emma Hayes walked into his life at a tech conference in Portland, all polished edges and practiced vulnerability, he fell exactly the way she needed him to. She made it easy. Late-night calls about her difficult ex-boyfriend, Liam Keller, who wouldn't leave her alone. Tears over coffee about how he was threatening to expose some financial irregularities at her firm. Nothing serious, she insisted. Just vindictive lies from a man who couldn't accept rejection. Ryan found himself wanting to protect her, this brilliant woman who somehow saw something worth keeping in a guy like him. His best friend Daniel warned him, actually. Over beers at their usual spot, Daniel had said Emma seemed like trouble, that guys like them needed to be careful with women like her. Ryan had laughed it off. Daniel didn't understand. Emma was different. Emma was real. The night she called him sobbing, Ryan was at Daniel's apartment watching the game. Her voice on the phone was pure terror. "Ryan, please, you have to help me. He came after me. I didn't mean to. There was so much blood." He found her in the parking garage of her building, sitting on the concrete beside her Mercedes, shaking. Her dress was torn. There was blood on her hands, smeared across her collarbone. She looked up at him with those green eyes swimming with tears and said the words that would destroy his life. "I didn't know what else to do. He attacked me. I just wanted him to stop." Ryan didn't call the police. He should have. Later, in his cell, he would replay that moment 10,000 times, wondering what the hell he'd been thinking. But in that moment, all he could think about was protecting her. He helped her clean up, drove her home, made sure she was safe. When she asked if anyone knew he'd been with her that night, he said no. Daniel thought he'd gone home early. "Good," she'd whispered. "No one can know you were here. Promise me," he promised. Liam Keller's body was found 6 days later in a ravine outside the city. Blunt force trauma to the head, defensive wounds on his arms, fibers from a military-issue jacket clutched in his dead hand. The kind of jacket Ryan had 3 of in his closet. The detectives came for him on a Tuesday morning. They had his DNA under the victim's fingernails. They had witness statements placing him near the ravine. They had motive. Liam had filed a restraining order against Ryan 2 weeks before his death, claiming Ryan had threatened him over Emma. Ryan hadn't even known Liam existed 2 weeks before his death. In the interrogation room, he kept asking for Emma, kept saying she could explain everything. They brought her in, and she looked at him like he was a stranger, like he was something dangerous. "I don't understand what's happening," she said, her voice small and frightened. "Ryan said he would take care of the Liam situation. I thought he meant legally. I didn't know—" her voice broke. "I didn't know he meant this. The courtroom was worse. Emma on the stand, crying, talking about how Ryan had become possessive, jealous of her past relationships. How he'd talked about his Marine training, about how easy it would be to make someone disappear. Daniel testified too, his face grave with regret. He's been unstable since he got back from deployment. I tried to help him, tried to be there for him, but he's not the same person. I think he's capable of things I don't want to believe." Ryan's lawyer was public defender who was handling 43 cases. The prosecution had phone records, forensic evidence, witnesses. They had a story that made perfect sense. Troubled veteran becomes obsessed with woman, kills her ex-boyfriend in jealous rage, tries to manipulate her into providing alibi. The jury took 4 hours. 25 years. As they led him out of the courtroom in handcuffs, Ryan saw Emma and Daniel in the hallway. She was crying on his shoulder. His arm was around her waist. They were whispering to each other with an intimacy that Ryan, even in his shock, recognized as something old, something established. Something that had existed long before that night in the parking garage. The cell door closed behind him, with a sound like the end of the world. For the first 3 months, Ryan Carter wanted to die. For the next 3 months, he wanted everyone else to die. Then he met Monk. Francis Monk Morrison was 57, serving his 19th year for hacking into the Pentagon in 2006. He found Ryan in the library staring at the same page of a legal textbook he'd been trying to read for 2 hours. "You got that look," Monk said, sitting down uninvited. "The look of a man who just figured out he got played." Ryan didn't answer. "Let me guess. Woman? Best friend? Both? I don't want to talk about." "Course you don't. But you're going to spend the next 2 decades in here thinking about it anyway, so might as well learn something useful while you do." Monk tapped the legal textbook. "That's a start, but it ain't enough. You want real power? You learn how the world actually works. Not the fairy tale they tell kids. The real thing." Over the next 4 years, Monk taught Ryan everything: how to code in 6 languages, how to exploit security vulnerabilities, how to read people, really read them the way predators read prey, how to plan 20 steps ahead, how to be patient. "You don't kill people like her," Monk told him once, his voice flat with the certainty of experience. "You ruin their reflection. You make them watch themselves fall apart. That's the revenge that lasts." Ryan studied law, psychology, computer systems, financial fraud. He read every document related to his case until he had it memorized. He looked for the cracks, the inconsistencies, and he found them. The detective who'd collected the DNA evidence had been taking money from a drug dealer. When that came out in 2028, it triggered reviews of all his cases, Ryan's included. The chain of evidence had problems. The witness statements had inconsistencies. His lawyer had been egregiously incompetent. After 8 years and 4 months, a judge overturned his conviction. Ryan Carter walked out of Monroe Correctional Complex on a Tuesday morning, the same day of the week they'd arrested him. He didn't call anyone, didn't go to a halfway house, didn't check in with his parole officer beyond the minimum required. He disappeared into Seattle like a stone, into dark water. Emma and Daniel were everywhere Ryan looked. Their faces smiled from magazine covers in grocery store checkout lines. Forbes had done a profile on their power couple philanthropy. Emma's charity, Hearts Forward, claimed to help formerly incarcerated people reintegrate into society. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so perfectly calculated. Daniel's investment firm, Meridian Capital, managed over $2 billion in assets. He'd given a TED talk about ethical business practices that made Ryan throw up in his mouth a little. They lived in a waterfront mansion in Madison Park. They drove matching Teslas. They were beautiful, successful, and beloved. They were everything Ryan had lost. Getting the maintenance job at Hearts Forward headquarters was almost too easy. They ran background checks, sure, but Ryan's conviction had been overturned. Officially, he was an innocent man, wrongly imprisoned. His references, all people he'd helped in prison with legal research, were glowing. His supervisor, a tired woman named Janet who just wanted someone reliable who'd actually show up, hired him on the spot. Ryan mopped floors, emptied trash cans, fixed broken toilets. And he listened. The charity's main office was in a converted warehouse in Pioneer Square, all exposed brick and inspirational quotes on the walls. Emma came in 3 times a week, usually in the afternoon. She'd click through the halls in her expensive shoes, talking on her phone about fundraising targets and media appearances. She never looked at the maintenance staff. They were invisible to her, the way most people had probably always been invisible to her. Daniel came by less often, usually for board meetings. He had that easy charm that made everyone in a room feel like they were his best friend. Ryan watched him joke with the receptionist, compliment the program director's new haircut, clasp shoulders and smile like he actually cared. Ryan cleaned the conference room after their meetings, read their discarded notes, memorized their schedules. 2 months in, working late to fix a leak in the 3rd floor bathroom, Ryan heard voices from Emma's office. The door was cracked. He moved closer, quiet as everything Monk had taught him. "I don't like it," Emma was saying. Her voice had an edge Ryan remembered. The real Emma, not the public version. The conviction being overturned. What if someone looks closer? "No one's looking." Daniel's voice was calm, soothing. "It was 8 years ago. The detective was dirty, that's all. Nothing connects back to us. If he's still alive, he won't stay hidden forever." A pause. Then Daniel laughed, and it was the coldest sound Ryan had ever heard. "Then we'll finish what we started." Ryan stood in that hallway for a full minute after they left, listening to his own heartbeat. Then he smiled for the first time in 8 years. Because now he knew. Now he was certain. And certainty was all he needed. Daniel Rice was careful, but he wasn't careful enough. He used a password manager, which was smart. He used 2-factor authentication, which was smarter. But he also used the same phone for business and personal, and he connected to the office Wi-Fi, and that Wi-Fi ran through routers that Ryan had access to. It took 3 weeks to get into Daniel's encrypted drive. Ryan worked on it in his apartment, a studio in Belltown that smelled like mildew and old takeout, using equipment he'd built from parts ordered under fake names. Monk's lessons had been thorough. The drive was a treasure trove: offshore accounts, falsified charity records, evidence of deals that would make the SEC very interested. But that wasn't what made Ryan's hands shake. In a folder labeled Insurance, he found audio files. Recordings from Liam Keller's phone, the one that had supposedly been destroyed. Ryan plugged in his headphones and pressed play. Liam's voice, tired and frustrated. "You two are playing with fire. Ryan's your friend, Daniel. You really going to do this to him? Daniel, calm as ever, he's loyal, not smart. She'll cry, he'll clean up the mess. By the time anyone asks questions, the story's already written. Emma and Ryan could picture her perfectly in that moment, cold and calculating. By the time they find the body, he'll already be the monster. No one questions the monster. Liam, again, this is insane. You'll ruin his life. We'll be giving him purpose, Emma said, and she actually laughed. He's always wanted to be the hero. Now he gets to be the villain instead. Everyone needs a role. Ryan paused the playback, sat in the dark of his apartment, listening to the rain on the window. He'd known, of course. Known they'd framed him, known they'd lied. But hearing them talk about destroying his life like it was a business strategy, like he was just a piece in their game, something crystallized inside him. Not rage. Rage was messy, impulsive. This was colder. This was clarity. He saved the file and titled it Reflection.mp4. Then he started planning. The beauty of revenge, Ryan had learned, was that it worked best when the target did most of the work themselves. You didn't need to destroy people like Emma and Daniel. You just needed to give them rope and step back. Phase 1 was almost boring in its simplicity. Hart's Forward's financial records were a mess of redirected funds and fake expenses. Emma had been skimming for years, hiding money in accounts under shell companies. It was brilliant, really. Steal from a charity meant to help prisoners while looking like a saint. The risk was that someone might actually look. Ryan made sure someone looked. He compiled everything into a neat package and sent it to 3 journalists known for investigative work. He sent it to the IRS. He sent it to the Washington Attorney General's office. All from untraceable accounts, all with enough documentation that ignoring it would be negligence. The first story broke on a Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, Emma was giving a teary press conference denying everything. By Wednesday evening, 2 board members had resigned. Ryan watched it all from his apartment, eating microwave pizza, and didn't smile. Phase 2 required more finesse. He'd learned Emma and Daniel's patterns, their paranoia, their weak spots. They trusted each other, had to trust each other, since they'd committed murder together. But that trust had fractures. He just needed to widen them. He created fake email accounts and text threads. Nothing obvious, nothing traceable, just little hints, little suggestions. Messages showing Emma had set up an offshore account titled Exit Strategy that Daniel didn't know about. Screenshots of Daniel texting with a woman named Sarah. Actually a composite Ryan had created from stock photos and AI, with just enough ambiguity to look like an affair. He sent the evidence to each of them from anonymous accounts. Then he waited. The fight started within days. Ryan wasn't there to see them, but he heard about them. The receptionist at Hart's Forward whispered to the program director about how Emma had shown up with red eyes, about how Daniel had stormed out of a meeting. The cracks were showing. At a board meeting 2 weeks later, Daniel actually shouted at Emma in front of witnesses. Something about trust, about secrets, about whether they were really in this together. Security footage Ryan definitely shouldn't have had access to showed Emma throwing a water glass at the wall. The media loved it. Power couple in crisis. Cracks in the perfect facade. The story had legs. But Ryan wasn't done. Not even close. The Spring Hearts Gala was the biggest charity event of the year, held at the Four Seasons with 500 guests and tickets starting at $1,000. Emma and Daniel had hosted it for 3 years running. This year, with all the controversy, attendance was actually up. People wanted to see the drama firsthand. Ryan had been planning this moment for months. He'd gotten a job with the catering company, which was easier than the charity. They were always short-staffed for big events. He'd mapped the venue's technical systems. He'd tested the upload 3 times. The night of the gala, he put on the server uniform and became invisible again. Just another worker in black and white, carrying trays, refilling glasses. He watched Emma work the room in her gold dress, watched Daniel shake hands and smile like everything was fine. They were good. Even Ryan had to admit they were good. At 8:30, right after the welcome speeches, Ryan dropped the glass tray. Emma turned, saw him, recognized him. He whispered his line and walked away, leaving her frozen in place. That was just theater, though, just the hook to make sure she was paying attention. At 9 o'clock, during Daniel's speech about the importance of second chances, Ryan uploaded the files. Every screen in the ballroom, the main display, the tablets at each table, the monitors in the lobby, suddenly showed the same thing. Audio waveforms and a play button. Liam Keller's name at the top. Someone hit play. Maybe on purpose, maybe by accident. It didn't matter. Liam's voice filled the ballroom. "You two are playing with fire. Ryan's your friend, Daniel." The room went silent. Daniel stopped mid-sentence, staring at the screen. Emma stood up from her table, her face white. Daniel's voice. "He's loyal, not smart. She'll cry, he'll clean up the mess." People started looking at each other. Phones came out. The recording kept playing. Emma's voice. "By the time they find the body, he'll already be the monster." Someone screamed. Might have been Emma. Ryan was already gone, walking out the service entrance into the Seattle night. Behind him, he could hear chaos erupting. Shouting, the crash of chairs, someone yelling to call the police. He walked 6 blocks before catching a bus, rode it to Northgate, got off and caught another bus heading south. Basic tradecraft, nothing fancy. By the time he made it back to his apartment, the story was everywhere. Twitter was exploding. News vans were setting up outside the Four Seasons. Someone had filmed Emma's breakdown and it was already viral. Ryan sat on his futon and watched the coverage with the sound off, watched the police arrive, watched Daniel being led out in handcuffs, watched Emma collapse and have to be helped to a car. He didn't feel victorious, didn't feel satisfied. He just felt tired. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. Clean work. Monk would be proud. Ryan stared at it. Monk had died in prison 2 years ago. Heart attack. This had to be one of his old contacts, someone who'd been watching, the underground network of people who understood that sometimes the system needed help delivering justice. He texted back, "Is it enough?" The response came immediately, "Is it ever?" Fair point. Ryan turned off his phone and lay back on the futon, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Wondered what happened now. Wondered if Emma and Daniel would actually go to prison, or if money and lawyers would save them again. Wondered if he'd spent 8 years and every dollar he had just to watch them walk away. Then he decided it didn't matter. He'd told the truth. He'd made them face what they'd done. The rest was up to the world. 2 days later, Emma sat alone in her Madison Park mansion. Daniel was in jail, denied bail as a flight risk. The charity had collapsed. Federal investigators were crawling through everything. Her lawyer said she'd probably avoid prison. She could claim Daniel had manipulated her, that she'd been afraid of him, that everything was his idea. She was a victim too. She knew how to play victim. She'd done it before. Her phone dinged with an email, unknown sender, no subject line. Against her better judgment, she opened it. 8 years. I learned patience. Below the text was a video file. Her hands shook as she pressed play. It was security footage from outside Monroe Correctional Complex. Dated 8 months ago. It showed Ryan walking out the gates, a plastic bag of belongings in one hand. He stopped at the edge of the parking lot and looked back at the prison. Then, just for a moment, he smiled. The video ended. Emma dropped the phone and started crying, deep heaving sobs that shook her whole body, because she understood what that smile meant. He'd known. From the moment he walked free, he'd known exactly what he was going to do, and she'd never seen him coming. Outside, a car started. She ran to the window in time to see a nondescript sedan pulling away, headlights cutting through the rain. She couldn't see the driver, but she knew. He was leaving. Not running, leaving. His work here was done. Ryan drove north on I-5, watching Seattle disappear in his rearview mirror. He had a new ID, enough money to start over, and no plan beyond getting far away. Maybe Montana, maybe Canada, maybe it didn't matter. 8 years in a cage. 8 years learning how the world really worked, how power moved, how people like Emma and Daniel operated in spaces where rules were suggestions and consequences were for other people. He'd studied them, learned them, and then he'd beaten them at their own game. Not with violence, not with anger, with patience, with information, with the truth they thought they'd buried. I gave them my loyalty, they gave me a sentence. I gave them time, they gave me fear. And now, balance is restored. He crossed the county line as dawn started breaking over the Cascades. In his pocket, his new phone buzzed with news alerts. The investigation was widening. More charges being filed. Former business partners turning on each other. The whole rotten structure coming down. Ryan didn't check the updates. He already knew how it ended. He'd written the ending 8 years ago in a prison cell, planning every move, every revelation, every moment of their downfall. They'd taught him that monsters weren't born. They were made. Created by people who thought they were clever enough to get away with it. People who thought loyalty was weakness and trust was a weapon. They were right about one thing, though. Everyone needs a role. They'd cast him as the monster. He'd played the part perfectly. And now, like any good monster, he was fading back into the darkness, leaving only the destruction behind as proof he'd existed at all. The road stretched ahead, empty and full of possibilities. Ryan Carter turned up the radio and drove toward whatever came next. Behind him, in the city he'd just left, Emma Rice sat in her mansion and understood what it meant to be haunted. Not by ghosts, by truth, by consequences, by the man she'd underestimated, by the monster she'd created. If this story left you thinking about justice, about revenge, about what happens when the system fails and people take matters into their own hands, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below about whether Ryan went too far, or not far enough. And like this video if you want more stories about the people who refuse to stay buried. Because the truth is, we're all just one betrayal away from becoming someone we don't recognize. The question is, what would you do with 8 years to plan your return?